Hello YouTube. Today I'd like to start a series of tutorials on graphical programming with C++. These tutorials will be done using windows.h, which is unfortunately not cross-platform and can only be used with Windows. For these tutorials I will be using the CodeBlocks IDE along with the MinGW C++ compiler. You can download them here at codeblocks.org. Go to downloads. Then you'll most likely download the binary release, and of course you'll have to go here because you have to be on a Windows computer to do this, and which one of these you will choose will depend on whether or not you have a compiler and whether or not you're an administrator. If you already have a compiler, choose one of these two. This one if you're an admin, this one if you're not an admin. And if you don't have a compiler, choose one of these two. This one if you're an admin, and this one if you're not an admin. The ones with user in the name don't require admin privileges and only install at the user level. But if you can get an admin to do it for you, I'd recommend you just use the regular one and install at the computer level. Anyway, without further ado, let's go and make a simple window for this tutorial. I'm just going to create a new project. So go to File, New Project, and choose Win32 GUI project. Click Next. Choose frame based, not dialog based. I hear dialog based is only for very small applications, and although I've never used it, frame based seems to be the way to go for larger applications. And thus I think it's better to just learn with the real thing. I don't really know much about dialog based. So I'm going to give it the title Tutorial 1. And unless you know what you're doing here, just leave it as is. I recommend leave it as is either way. And choose finish. So there you go. We've got our new project right here. It's called Tutorial 1. So click on expand the sources thing and click main.cpp, which is the only file we have in the project so far. And you'll be greeted once you get in with all this code, which is a standard project to just create a basic window. So we're going to compile and run and see what it looks like. There you go. There's our window here, and this one is present because our project is in debug mode. It creates this console window that goes along with it, which is a nice feature because you can output variables using cout or printf, or I don't know, whatever the C equivalent is, but it's good for debugging because you can see what's going on without having to make a message box or something pop up with the variable data. You can just put it here, and then when you want to get rid of this and your program's pretty much done, you choose build, select target, click release, and then you'll notice if we rebuild and release this time, there won't be a console window once it finishes building. Building and release also takes a little longer, but yeah, now we just have this and there's no console window. I'm just going to take that back to debug. Anyway, so I'll start explaining some of this. The first thing you'll notice when you get into this standard program that they give you is that there is no main function. The equivalent of main function in this is winMain, as you can see right here. And that's standard for all windows.h projects, I'm pretty sure. I don't know why they use winMain instead of main. It doesn't really make a difference as far as I've seen, but it just is how it's done. So, and then pretty sure this is, you'll see WinAPI a lot, and I'm pretty sure that's the calling convention, or it has to do with the calling convention. So yeah, basically some key things to note in here. All these arguments are sent by the operating system when you run your program. You don't have to pass them, like it's not like command line arguments or anything like that. You know, it's not argc, carstar, argv. So yeah, those are just have to do with creating the window and stuff. This variable here is very important. It's the handle to the window. So its type is hwind, which is basically a handle, and conveniently its lowercase hwind is the name they decided to give it. I don't know why they had to do that, but basically you will use that a lot when you're creating child windows of your parent window, which I'll explain later, or when you'll pass it to various functions which are operating on your current window. A lot of these are just to register the window, and you probably won't need to change anything in here. Then this here, this if statement, it gives your program a chance to execute if something goes wrong, although I've never seen it actually, or it gives it a chance to exit, sorry, if something goes wrong, although I've never seen that happen. I guess like if it couldn't get enough memory or something like that. Anyway, as you can see here, a function called createWindowEx is called, which is what creates your main window, and it returns hwind. Well, it returns a handle which is stored in the variable hwind. So some notable parameters in here. First of all, this is the title of your window. So if I change this to tutorial 1 and we build and run, you'll notice that the title has been changed. See, it now says tutorial 1 instead of that CodeBlocks template window thing that it had before. This is your type of window. So here, let me just run that again. As you can see now, you got a minimize and maximize box, and you can resize the window as you want. Max, minimize, max, back to normal. Oh, I'll close both of them. And if you don't want that to happen, which I've never actually had a finished program that could be resized, although as much as having a program that can be resized is better for the user, if you're just learning, you might want to try using WS sys menu. What that does is it takes away the minimize box, takes away the maximize box, and makes it so the window can't be resized at all, which makes it a lot easier for positioning your GUI elements, which you'll be doing later on in another tutorial. As you see, I have no option of resizing it, and the minimize and maximize box are gone, so all I can do is move it around. This is a lot of these things are very well commented, which is nice. The only thing they didn't do in the comments is give you alternatives, but you can always look it up. Usually if you Google like this or whatever, you'll find it on MSDN, and it'll tell you some alternative things that you can use. So basically what this is saying is that Windows will decide where to position the window when you start your program. Like, it'll put it there, but if I were to start more instances of it, it would cascade them down diagonally like that. I'd just recommend that probably, although I'm guessing there's a way you can specify that you want it centered or you want it in the very top or something like that. And then this is the height and width, these two parameters here. So if you want, we can see, we'll put in like 200 for the width and 600 for the height. Build and run, and then it'll look like that, and you see it's a funny shaped window. And then we'll just go back 400 by 400. This says that your Windows child to the desktop. I don't actually know any alternatives to that. I'm guessing there'd be a way that you could make it full screen from there, but I'm not entirely sure. Although that could just be like, I'm not sure if you can use a different thing like that for your parent window, but I know when you'll see later on when you're creating windows on your window, like a button is technically a window, you'll see that you'll pass it this variable here, hwind, which is saying that your button is child to this main window. I'm sorry if that sounded confusing. Those probably aren't very important. Then in here is where your main loop of your program is. Since it's a graphical program, it's got to basically run and constantly do its thing until the user makes some sort of significant action, like clicking a button or maybe hovering over something. I'm not sure if that counts, but basically what this is saying is while the user has not done something that would cause the window to quit, like closing the X button, then it calls this translate message function, and then it calls this dispatch message function here, and you don't have access to either of these functions. They're either in the operating system or windows.h, but this function here, dispatch message, calls this function here, window procedure, as it says right here. So basically this function here is where all the action in your program would go, as I'll teach you in a later video. This is where you would create your buttons and other elements, and you would create actions that can be done. So like you give a button a number basically, and then when the user clicks the button, it would return a case WM command and then the button number, and then you would take an action in there. But we'll leave that for another day. Anyway, it can be quite daunting at first, but MSDN is a really good resource once you get the hang of it. It's kind of strange because they've declared, there's so many different variables that are declared in windows.h, like dword for example, and these other variables, so it doesn't really look like standard C++, but you get the hang of it, and a lot of times it is useful that they declared these other variables. Anyway, yeah, I hope this tutorial is helpful, and I will post more soon.